Okay, so I wanted to go over, this is 2.7, number 14, and I just wanted to show, number one, how to check to make sure your answers are right. And then also just going over how I think about these things, okay? And so I use this box here. It's called the array model or area model, whatever you want to call it. And I am going to do this one down here, specifically because a couple of you got it wrong. And I want to show you how I check to make sure my answer is right. So the very first thing that I do, and actually a lot of you got this right. So I'm going to just click this over here. So when I do this right here, x squared plus 2x minus 15, the very first thing that I do is I draw a little box. And here, my box is all sideways, sorry. When I'm doing this here, before we were multiplying, right? We multiplied this times this, and then we got this. But now we're almost like undoing that multiplication to get this. So we're looking for the length and the height of that rectangle, right? We're looking for the length and the height for that rectangle. Hold on a second. Hold on, there it goes. Okay, good. Okay, so here's my little rectangle. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first term. Ooh, geez. I'm going to take that first term and put it in the first box. And I'm going to put the last term in the last box. That's what I do. Okay, now I am looking for, and if I could quote this, oh, here it is right here. I'm going to ask this question over and over again. And so this time I'm saying, what times what gives me negative 15? So here I want this to be a 15. And then what plus what gives me that 2 right there. So I'm going to think about that. And the way that I think about this is that I now start giving all the multiples, I mean, not the multiple, the factors of 15, right? So here I'm saying, okay, well, 15 is 1 times 15, and then 2 is a no, right? It's going to show up here. 2 is a no. And then I say, oh, it's 3 times 5. And then there's no more factors because 4 doesn't go in there. And then 5 is on the other side. So now I'm looking for what times what gives me negative 15. So one of these is going to be negative, either this or this, or this or this. And then I also want to add these two together to give me a positive 2. Now the positive 2 will tell you which one gets negative. So clearly the pair that I'm going to be looking at is going to be 3 and 5. But which one of these would be positive and which one of these would be negative in order for me to get a positive 2? What do you all think? Which one would have to give me, which one has to be negative and which one has to be positive? A couple more people, y'all. So which one has to be negative in order for me to get a negative 15? And when I add them together, it gives me a positive 2. So someone in the chat says, Ms. Johnson, that 3 has to be negative. And I think, okay, well, why? Right? And I'm like, okay, well, why? And then they say, well, Ms. Johnson, because negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. And then they say, but Ms. Johnson, at the same time, negative 3 plus 5 is positive 2. And I'm like, oh, that's what you told me that you wanted from there. Exactly. So if you ever do this and your your signs are a little bit off, right? Like instead you got a negative 2x, it just means what? If you got a negative 2x here, what does that mean? What would you need to do to your work here? Now, a couple of you said this and then you're like, oh, that's all I'd have to do. And I'm like, yeah, that's all I'd have to do. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that answer, so what do I do with this negative 3x and 5x? I'm going to put it here and here, and it doesn't matter which way I put it. So I put negative 3x here and 5x here. Okay. So, yeah, exactly. Someone said, Ms. Johnson, all I'd have to do is switch the negatives. Exactly. So if you're adding and you got a positive, but you wanted a negative or vice versa, all you'd have to do is switch who is negative. Yeah, just switch your negatives. Perfect. Okay, so here goes this. So the thing that I want to do is I'm going to say what times what gives me x squared. So I go, and another way to do this here, I'll say it like this. The way I think about this one is this. I say, what's the biggest thing I could take out of this? So out of this right here, what's the biggest thing I could take out? X squared and negative 3x. Yeah, the biggest thing I could take out is a x. So then once I have that, then I just play multiplication. X times what gives me x squared. X times what goes here? Yeah, x, very good. And then now you can fill out the rest of this. X times what gives me negative 3x. Very good. So Ms. Johnson, this is one of your factors, x minus 3. Okay, so you want me to write this over here? Yeah, x minus 3, great. And then x times what gives me 5x? X times what gives me 5x? Very good. So x plus 5. Very good. So here's my two factors, and then I'm pretty much done. Okay. So that's how I get my answer. But Ms. Johnson, you said that I'd be able to check my answer. Okay, I'd be able to check my answer. So once I have this, then it's almost like I know the outside of the rectangle and I'm trying to fill in the inside. So pretend this isn't here, right? I would do my box. I don't know if this is the way, if you're not using the box for answers, then I would use the box to check my answer. So then I would put x minus 3 up here and x plus 5. And you're like, Ms. Johnson, you just did that. Yeah, and I'm just checking my answers, right? So x times x, it's x squared. And then I get negative 3x. And then I get 5x. And then I get negative 15. And then I'm checking, does all of this match that? Does all the insides match that? And I say x squared, check. Negative 15, check. Is 5x minus 3x really 2x? And you guys are like, yeah, Miss Johnson. So that means I'm right. So Miss Johnson can't take any points away from me on a quiz or a test. Not that I'm trying to take points away, but now I know, I have confidence knowing that I did this right. And that you now can go back and check every single one of these by just multiplying. And I would, right? I would take the time to check your answers, because this is kind of like one of the gifts of math, right? I like knowing that I'm right, and knowing that you're right means that you figured out your answer and you're like checking your answers along the way. Okay. Boom. Oh.